Well, happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. I unfortunately have no green, but I thought I would at least sparkle today, so I put on my sparkly vest. I hope you guys have had a wonderful St. Patrick's Day. I certainly have. It's been really nice, even though I've been battling some pretty nasty allergies, so I hope you guys will forgive me if I sniffle just a little bit from time to time, but I did promise that I would get this done this week, and so let's go ahead, let's get started. So our first question is actually one of my favorite questions that I've had so far, so I can't wait to actually answer this one. One of our followers on Facebook actually asked, what is your holy grail of holy places? Which I actually kind of like this question. People have asked me a lot of times, for example, what is your favorite cathedral that you photographed, or that sort of thing. And this one is actually a little bit different because it kind of aims for what I want to do in future, and if there's something out there that I would consider just the ultimate thing that I've captured. I mean, I did capture Notre Dame, and that was actually a really big one on my list. But if I had to pick one specific holy place that I would consider, you know, I finally got to do this. This is the one thing I've wanted for forever. That would have to be the Sistine Chapel in Rome. I think that that one has been, I mean, it was on my list of cathedrals to see before I ever even remotely thought of this project, before I was even a photographer. I mean, I grew up knowing what that particular church was. I grew up knowing stories about it. I was probably 5, but by the time I knew about, you know, Michelangelo painting on the ceiling and all of that. So if I had to pick one holy grail church, it would have to be the Sistine Chapel in Rome. Haven't been to Italy yet, but that's definitely high on my list. I did have a similar question from Trevor. He's one of our new subscribers on YouTube. He actually asked a lot of questions, mainly in the fellow photographer realm, but I did want to start with this one because it is a little bit similar. He says, out of all the places, excuse me, all of the locations you have on your list of places, where would you most like to go and why? And so I thought I would answer that a little bit differently than the other one. They were similar questions, but instead of saying, you know, just one specific church that I would consider the ultimate church to be able to capture, which again, just has to be the Sistine Chapel. Locations is a little bit broader a term. In spite of how much I love the Sistine Chapel, and I certainly would aim to go there, if I had to pick a location just on the map, Bavaria is definitely someplace I'd like to go. I'd love to just spend several months in Bavaria. There are so many amazing churches there. And of course, you know me, I love the Baroque. It's kind of Baroque heaven. So, you know, Bavaria would be a specific location that I would want to go to first and foremost and really, really focus my efforts there at the start. Trevor also asked, what is the main reason you started photography? I actually didn't start photography at all to be able to capture this kind of thing. This came way later. Believe it or not, I did not start off to be a photographer in the first place. My original goal, I went to college studying ballroom dancing. And I took a photography job because I was just looking for work, and someone suggested, you know what, you like to take a lot of pictures, and I do. I went to Disneyland, and I took, I think, 37 rolls of film, yes, film, in like 2 days. And so they're like, why don't you get a job at this photography studio that was just at the mall, you know? And that's actually how I got started. I was doing children's photography specifically, and I did that. And then from there, I actually started photographing ballroom dance. I was photographing for 6 years. I photographed as the official photographer 2 of the largest amateur ballroom dancing competitions in the country, and loved it. I still kind of, I miss the dancing world in general from time to time, even though I've kind of done other things, but my photography did not start with a mind towards travel or anything like that at all. You know, even from there, I went on to weddings. And it wasn't for quite some time that I'd settled on, you know, this is something that I want to do even more than that, is this holy place. So the reason I started photography was literally just because I had fun taking pictures and there was a job available. So there it was. And then he also asks, Trevor also asks, what was the most challenging thing you had to overcome as a photographer, and how did you get through it? Believe it or not, I actually almost died on a photography trip. It's a little embarrassing. I got lost in the woods overnight. I was capturing. I used to go on an annual trip up to Oregon and Washington State to capture waterfalls. I do love waterfalls quite a bit. I'm a huge nature lover, and waterfalls are kind of my weakness there. And there was this place called Silver Falls State Park, and Silver Falls has this trail of 10 waterfalls, and of course I couldn't resist that. But the trail back, it was supposed to be a loop, but the trail back wasn't very well marked, and I took the wrong path. There were like 3 different pathways, and by the time I realized that I was on the wrong one, it was getting dark, and I just had to kind of stay there overnight, and it very nearly froze to death. It was kind of a harrowing experience. So that was probably easily my most challenging thing. But I always joke about it afterwards. It's like, hey, I've suffered for my art, but that was definitely the most challenging thing I've ever had to overcome, just as a photographer, was getting through this this thing. And of course, because this is who I am, my whole time I was sitting there going, I hope these pictures worked out, because otherwise it wouldn't be worth it. So that's my harrowing story of working as a photographer. Okay, let's see. Trevor is also asking about tips and tricks for an aspiring photographer and someone who just wants to do photography but doesn't have a lot of money to invest in it. What do you suggest is the most important equipment to put that money in? Tips and tricks as far as photography is concerned. Well, any time I'm talking to somebody who is new to photography, I do advise that you search for what you really want to do. That can be hard. A lot of people want to just do everything, and there's nothing wrong with taking pictures anytime you want to. I take pictures of stuff that I don't specialize in all the time, because any practice is going to be practice. But you want to eventually get to the point where you are narrowing down your focus. No matter how often you take pictures of something else, you're going to come back to that narrower niche. You're going to want to do that. That is kind of important. So that's definitely a tip or trick. And I know a lot of new photographers can get frustrated by that. I've had a lot of people try and fight me on that. No, I want to do everything. You can do anything you want, but if you want to actually make a name for yourself as a photographer, you've got to specialize. It wasn't until I actually started specializing in dance photography that became a thing. And while I didn't actually keep that as my focus, it was something that I was known for. I was not known for doing everything. I was known for doing a specific thing. So definitely keep that one in mind. And then as far as equipment goes, don't stress over much about your body. If you have a decent DSLR, and there's tons of them out there that are very affordable, I actually invested more in my lenses first. My first professional, quote unquote, professional camera was actually just a Rebel, and I still to this day have portraits in my online portfolio, my wedding portfolio, and actually in my holy places as well, that were taken with nothing but a Rebel. And so while I certainly prefer the equipment I have now, I would never recommend starting on the most expensive equipment. You're going to waste a lot of shutter time. I mean, honestly, by the time I realized where I wanted to be as a photographer, I'd blown through 2 cameras, and I would never have wanted to spend $4,000 on cameras to learn on. So get good at what you have and start investing in the lenses, because you know what, the body is interchangeable. You can do that at any time. You can switch your body out. I had good lenses by the time I got my full frame camera, and I was really, really glad about that, because I knew how to use them. And by then I was an established enough photographer that the camera body wasn't so much a learning tool anymore. It was the mastery tool. So start with a learning tool, then get to your mastery tool, but in the meantime, save up and buy those lenses. You're not going to regret that at all. Tommy asks, do you bring lighting with you to these places, or are you using natural light? I love playing with lighting as far as like a studio setting is concerned, or even a wedding is concerned, but where these holy places come from, I actually don't bring any lighting equipment at all. And part of the reason for that is I treat them like a museum. I'm a huge lover of art, and I love museums, and there are reasons why you cannot use a flash in a museum. You cannot use a flash when you're taking pictures of the Mona Lisa. And the reasoning for that is that these flashes do actually have an effect on the artwork. And so I actually treat my holy places in the same way. I don't want to use a flash in there. I've never used a flash in a single holy place. And the lighting that comes from a lot of these, for example, the stained glass windows, it paints the walls these beautiful colors. There's no need to use a flash in a lot of these places. I've never sat there wishing I had a flash or external lighting on me at all when I'm in these churches. The lighting tends to be beautiful. So no external lighting needed. It's just me and my camera. Cheryl asks, what is the first camera you ever owned? I went through that a little bit. I first owned a Rebel, and then I moved on to a higher Canon series, a full frame series with the 5Ds, the 5Ds and 6Ds. And so I still use those. Little quirk about me, I actually name all of my cameras. My first camera was Dave, and then my the camera I had most recently before I purchased my current one was Lucky. I now own Giacomo. That is just kind of a weird little quirk from me. I name my cameras, and the fun thing is my husband, who actually has been starting to do these videos for me, he's my behind the scenes guy. When he bought his camera, which is a Rel, that's what he uses, he named his as well. So we kind of keep this tradition. It's like, okay, which are we going to use today? We're going to use Giacomo or Pepe, and it's kind of a fun little quirk that we enjoy. Cheryl also asks, how old were you when you first wanted to be a photographer? I never thought about photography originally. Like I said, I was originally in ballroom dancing, so when I realized I actually wanted to be a photographer, I was in my mid-20s. But I've been a photographer, and Cheryl asked this as well. She asked how long I've been a photographer. So did Trevor, by the way. Some similar questions this time around, a lot about my own backstory. I've been a photographer now for about 15 years, and yes, it has gone through its changes and its varying machinations. I'm really happy with where I am, though, right now, and I'm always pushing myself to do more in those areas that I'm really strongly passionate about. But it's been about a 15-year journey to here. Cheryl also asked a fun question of, would you still want to be a photographer if you were born in the early 1900s? It's a funny little question. I don't know actually. I think in the early 1900s it would have been a lot harder for a woman to be a photographer anyway. I feel really blessed to be in a position where it's something that I can really shine in that field. Also, there were very specific things that led me to where I was. I'm not sure the same thing would have happened had I been born in the 1900s. I think it would be really cool to use one of those, some of those old-fashioned cameras, though. I almost had the opportunity to use one once and passed it up, and I kind of always regretted that. But so I don't know. I think probably if I'd been born at that time, I wouldn't have reached where I am right now. So, you know, as a believer in God, I believe He puts us where we need to be at the time we need to be them, and so that I think He knew what He was doing in that regard, so I could do what it is I'm doing right now. And then I also had another question that didn't really have anything to do with the project specifically, by Kathy, and we're in the season of Lent right now, and I had actually written a post recently about the Lenten fast, and as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we don't actually observe Lent as a rule, but a lot of members actually choose to for a variety of reasons. I started celebrating, or observing, I should say, the Lenten fast several years ago as a study in interfaith relations, as well as just a personal journey of spirituality in a time when I really needed it, and it's really been a really good thing for me. But she did ask how the members of that particular faith fast, because we don't actually do the Lenten fast so much. Again, many members do that just personally as a personal choice, but typically speaking, members of that faith, actually we fast on a monthly basis. We choose the first Sunday of the month is what we call Fast Sunday, and we fast for the day. It's basically we skip 2 meals. It's a supper to supper thing, and that's how we observe fasting. But I have personally found a lot of fulfillment in also observing the Lenten fast for a variety of reasons, and I enjoy doing that to I mean, it's a, like I said, it's a bonding experience with other Christian faiths, and I like that. Well, those were great questions, people. I really appreciated doing all of those. And now I did promise an announcement for my patrons. I'm actually really excited about this. So the last Q&A we talked about, and I've had this question a lot even since then, was about whether or not I was doing a book. And so a book is going to get made. And what I'm actually going to do now for my patrons is any patron is actually going to be listed in the acknowledgments of that book. If you help me out in any respect with regard to putting this project together, you will get an acknowledgement. So that's going to be something that we're going to do. And then for For our higher level patrons, our $15 and $20 patrons, that's our living history tier and our travel companion tier, those patrons specifically, anyone in that tier will actually receive a personal copy of the book. They will be given a signed copy of that book when it's done, and I'm actually kind of excited about that. In addition, I'm also going to give that same signed copy deal to the first 10 people who subscribe as patrons. And so we have our 5 wonderful patrons. I feel like it's appropriate to give those people and the next few, those people who first start out with this project and help me get this going in the first place. So I feel like that should be rewarded. There's a lot of loyalty in those people, and so those people will also get a signed personal copy of the book when it's done. And I realize it's going to take some time to get that done, but that's yours, guys. You get the first copies of the book signed by moi. So I hope you guys enjoy that. That's our big announcement for this particular Q&A. Hope you guys enjoy that, and we do look forward to doing our next one. Thanks, guys. Happy St. Patrick's Day.